just as often felt the sting of her walls. To look back at the history of Anderson is to trace the timeline of some of the biggest names in the ASA today, and to remember the faces of heroes nearly forgotten. But the real story of the ASA at Anderson Speedway is the same now as it has always been. 400 laps of tire-burning, car-crunching action. Short track racing series in the country. The AC-Delco Challenge Series visits Anderson, Indiana as GM Goodwrench Service presents the Anderson Weidner 400. It's hazy, hot, and humid here in Anderson Speedway in Anderson, just outside Indianapolis. But hey, it's summertime in the good old US of A, and we've more than gotten used to it. I certainly hope that you have too. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Drever. This is Rob Albright. For those of you keeping score, we've been doing this for a while together, and perhaps you've gotten used to us by now as well. We are here at Anderson Speedway, which is the shortest racetrack on the entire series of the AC-Delco Challenge Series racing here in the United States, and it is going to be fun and exciting, a place that has a lot of history. Well, I can only remember back a year ago when we had a flag-to-flag victory by Steve Holtzhausen. 400 laps he led this thing and won it at the end. Sounds like it might have been a little bit boring, but my recollection, Rob, it was anything but.
As dominating as Steve was, it was the narrowest margin of victory all season, and for me it's brought back some tremendous memories. I can remember back in 1984 when Darrell Waltrip sat on the pole, Alan Kowicki alongside. Alan led the early laps until he lost an engine. Darrell with a brand new car hard into the wall. I remember in 1988 when Butch Miller and Ted Musgrave went from the front row side by side for 118 laps. It's a track, Brian, where the guys that are supposed to win, the Mike Eddies and the Bob Senekers, don't always get it done. I think we may well see a surprise winner tonight.
Well, it's a place where anything can happen, and it often does. So peek into your crystal ball just a little bit. What are we going to see here tonight?
Oh my, the guy that can make the car handle on the bottom of the racetrack. Some of the most exciting racing I've seen all season was our 20-lap last chance race last night just to transfer in. It's a track where you can't win without bumping and rubbing. Don't wax these cars, folks. It's going to be rubbed off before the race is over.
We'll be enjoying a lot of good racing here in just a few minutes. There's a lot of great drivers up in the front of the starting grid. In fact, I think our entire top 10 in points is all up front here tonight, so that's the way it's going to be. And down there with them, certainly in her rightful place, America's only female pit reporter in stock car racing.
The current Hooters Super Cup point standings. There's Gary St. Amant in fifth. One of the few drivers says, boy, I absolutely love this racetrack. So expect big things from him tonight. Brad Loney sixth, and Bob Seneker. Mike Miller, that's my pick tonight. Tony Raines and Dave Sensiba, who had a great run a week ago at his home track in Grand Rapids.
Well, we're almost ready to get this race underway. Once again, now we'll go down trackside. Sandy Hang will be the one doing the honors.
Well, it is that time, folks, and I'm here with Tony Smith with Weidner Chevrolet. Hey, let's get this started.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Quarter-mile racetrack. It's going to be a beehive of activity here at Anderson in just a minute. Welcome to the AC-Delco Challenge Series on Prime as GM Goodwrench Service presents the Anderson Weidner 400, brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works. By Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires. By Winnebago, raise your expectations of what a motorhome should be. And by your GM Goodwrench Service dealer, we want your business. The cars are circling the racetrack. There's Jeff, our chief official here, waving at the drivers. The drivers are waving back at him and at the crowd. The Anderson Weidner 400 here at the Speedway at Anderson is just about ready to get underway. JEG's High Performance is the proud sponsor of this evening's starting grid. Dial 1-800-CALL-JEG today to receive your free JEG's mail order catalog loaded with thousands of top name brand performance parts and accessories. So rather than just getting right into it, we've got a sponsor tonight for the starting grid. Let's run it down.
Row #1, Mike Eddy, a new track record. The driver from Midland, Michigan, the GM Goodwrench Service HRE Racing Pontiac, and Tony Raines, whose crew chief led Steve Holtzhausen to wire-to-wire victory here last year. Tony, of course, in the Baker Cleanburn Pontiac.
Mike Miller and Bob Seneca, a pair of veterans on row number 2, and they'll be charging towards the front here with some caution, however, that veterans certainly bring.
Pole winner a week ago at Grand Rapids, Dave Sensible, will start in 5th position inside row number 3, and Brad Loney, who's run very strongly here in his 4 previous starts in the Flex Steel Winnebago H&W Chevy.
And, of course, a couple of young guns on row number 4. Gary St. Amant of the Winsport City Ford, Glenn Allen Jr. in the Eaglewood Construction Parkwest Pontiac. These guys will be charging up there, too.
The strongest guy at Anderson Speedway over the last half-decade, Scott Hansen, will start 9th in the AFCO Racing Wisconsin Aviation Chevrolet, and Ray Skillman in the top 10 in the DuPont Kendall Imperial Van Zols.
Points leader Brian Refner sits alongside Mr. Consistency, Ken Stauffer. Well, both of them have been very consistent this season.
Row number 7, Steve Holtzhausen, last year's winner, and Todd Forbes in 07, strong a week ago.
Young Joe Knott in the Allen Knott, Valvoline Raby Ford, alongside Harold Fair in the Build-A-Mold Dana Pontiac, veteran driver who has won here before.
Row number 9 on the inside, Jeff Neal seeking a first career victory, and leading rookie Rick Beebe in car number 6 in row 9.
Bill Baird in the number 26 Saturn Machine Allen's Body Shop Chevrolet, alongside rookie contender Rick Miller, healthy again after his big crash in Topeka.
In the 11th row, rookie driver Eddie Sharp in car number 50, alongside him fellow rookie J.D. Summers in the 22.
Jim Cooper takes the wheel of A.J. Cooper's number 71 machine, alongside rookie contender Pat Bordeaux in the BASF Finishmaster Chevrolet.
A driver who's run a lot of races here at Anderson, a local favorite in car number 02, the Tony's Pizza Payless Food Chevrolet, alongside Tim Sauter, younger brother of Jay, in the Delta Fawcett Victor Ford.
And Dr. Yale Conley, the racing surgeon from West Virginia, in the Simonton Windows Valvoline Chevrolet, alongside Ted Smokestad of the Super America entry, round out our field. 28 cars they added to at the last moment, and that is the field that will take to the track here in just a few moments. See the green flag. 400 laps of racing on a quarter-mile track. It's only 100 miles when you think of it that way, Rob. It's a little bit interesting.
The drivers that did not qualify, Tom Jones, it's been 70-plus races since he last missed a starting field. Tony Roper, 60 races since he last missed one. Lowell Bennett, subbing for Cindy Peterson, failed to make the race, as did Russ Gamester and Scott Neal.
But the 28 cars that did are following that man, Mike Eddy, who led the season point standings all year long until just a couple of races ago. His bad luck took over, but he sits on the pole here tonight, as he has many times. And Mike Eddy leads on the outside, Tony Raines, and already now Mike Miller moving solidly into 3rd, and a little bit of dust getting kicked up over here in turn number 1 as the number 98 car starts to slide back a little bit. Ken Stauffer there, and it looks as though Mike Eddy defending that inside position with a vengeance here in the early going, Rob.
Tony Raines, remembering that Steve Holtzhausen jumped from the outside front row to lead, battles Mike Eddy unsuccessfully as finally the 88 eases out in front.
Well, Mike Eddy now dropping down as he has been, and now he can take a little bit more of an offensive line around the racetrack, putting Tony Raines behind him now, and the front 4 cars opening up a little bit of a gap on the 5th place running Bob Seneca as they go around. It's really almost like one of those carnival attractions where the guys ride motorcycles around inside of a barrel. This place is really something.
You will see contact, you will see bumping, you will see rubbing. The objective is to get right in behind squarely and get a guy tapped just enough to get him unsettled. What you don't want to do is get one fender underneath, hit the corner of the left rear corner of the guy in front of you, and turn him around. That's a no-no. Bumping is okay on a quarter-mile racetrack, and we're seeing Tony Raines doing a little bit of that with Mike Eddy already.
Mike Eddy and Tony Raines opening a little bit of a gap back to Mike Miller there, who's giving himself a couple of car lengths to try to maybe watch these guys, and seeing them bumping around in the front there, maybe he's taking a little bit more of a discretionary stance in this race. On the other hand, it could be that the two of them are just running that much harder. There's Howdy Thomas, crew chief, the number 88 car, the Goodwrench Pontiac of Mike Eddy. And, well, Howard's just kind of standing there. There's a lot of guys spinning around. They look like ballerinas, well, almost anyway, and that they're doing pirouettes trying to watch the race. They'll be dizzy before the night's over trying to watch from inside this little racetrack.
As they call those high-tech machines of sorts that Howdy was standing on top of, war wagons. They're war chests. They've got everything that you need to run a race here at Anderson Speedway. Of course, the pit area down in the infield, very tight, confined quarters. And as the evening progresses, we'll be telling you why qualifying last night was so important in terms of a pit strategy. One mandatory stop, and I think most of the drivers will only make one, depending how and when caution flags may come this evening.
10 laps gone, and Mike Eddy has led all 10 of them from the pole. As we look now at a battle for 4th place, it's Brad Loney in the number 33 entry, the Winnebago Flex Steel H&W Chevrolet, trying to hold back the 84 Bob Seneca's Johnsonville Foods Ford Thunderbird.
Well, Brad didn't qualify as well last night as he had anticipated. They practiced under very hot, sunny skies. They qualified when 2. Seneca waiting for a chance to make a pass.
The wise men of this place say that a car will tend to tighten up as the temperatures cool down a little bit, so a lot of the drivers loosened up their settings in anticipation of that. And it is a little bit of a guessing game when practice and qualifying takes place in the heat of the day and the race takes place at night. Experience stands for a lot, and it appears as though Bob Seneca's experience has given him a little bit better setup than Brad Loney.
Behind Loney and Seneca are Dave Sensiva and Gary St. Amant. They're well in contention here. But this twosome that we're looking at, Loney and Seneca, almost a full straightaway behind the torrent pace being set by Mike Eddy and Tony Raines, who continue to run nose to tail first and second.
And they're beginning to get into traffic already, which no matter who was at the tail end of this field, it would be almost nose to tail right from the beginning. Mike Eddy pulling alongside Dr. Yale Conley and putting him a lap down. Drops over in front. Tony Raines having a little bit harder time getting around, but now he does as well. As we continue to look at Dave Sensiva, Gary St. Amant, and Glenn Allen Jr., 3 of the great young drivers of the American Speed Association doing battle.
Sensiva has fallen off the pace just a touch in front of him, Brad Loney and Bob Seneca. And look at Gary St. Amant beginning to challenge for that 5th position.
Sensiva's car seems to want to run in kind of an outside-in configuration. He goes high in the straightaway, dives down, cuts the apex, then drifts back up in the straight. It would appear to open a little bit of a hole for Gary St. Amant, but he's not able to shove the nose of the number 7 wins Ford City Ford Thunderbird through there just yet.
Gary looking high, then back down to the low side. Early in the race, you'll not see a lot of cars running on a higher groove. At the immediate drop of the green flag, most of the competitors, save for outside front row starter Tony Raines, who wanted to lead and pick up 5 bonus points. Most of the drivers immediately dove for position on the inside, fell into single file running order. We've got a yellow already.
Yellow flag coming out, and we're trying to see just exactly what has caused it.
Looks like the car number 02 has come to rest in the inside of the backstretch, and there it is. That's the local driver, Ray Fullen, from right here in Anderson, Indiana, and the Tony's Pizza Payless Food Chevrolet. That, of course, is the Randy Larson automobile. Now, you can see that some of the teams have put their gear on the outside of the infield area, and I think it looked like Fullen's car slid into some tires. We'll get a better shot of it here.
From our vantage point, it was completely obscured by all of the activity in the infield there. He gets a little bit of a nudge. Ted Smokestad, some damage on the front of his car, apparently got into the 02, and he does indeed back into somebody. There goes the Gatorade. Yeah. Doggone it, I hate it when that happens. And now the Tony's Pizza entry is back on the racetrack. We're going to take a cut away from the action. You know, we got to do it every now and then, and when the yellow flag comes out, it's our best chance. We'll see you in a minute. Caution here at Anderson Speedway as they take care of the last details and amenities to the off-track excursion by that car right there, the 02, Ray Fullen from Anderson, Indiana, certainly a favorite with the fans here at this racetrack. There's some damage also to the number 78 car, Steve Holtzhausen, last year's winner, and let's take another look and see if we can analyze. We didn't see this many cars get together, but let's take a look.
Trying to find Steve Holtzhausen. There he is, dropping to the bottom of the racetrack was Kent Stauffer in car number 98. Just saw the front part of Holtzhausen's fiberglass bodywork off. We only caught it at this point. We saw Stauffer scrambling to get back out on the racetrack. No significant damage. There are going to be a lot of cars with a lot more damage still on the racetrack at the end of tonight.
There is the 78 car. Of course, last year, Steve Holtzhausen driving the Howie Let-Out prepared machine from cloth to cloth, green flag to checker, never gave up the lead even in the pits. Back to green flag racing. Mike Eddy jumps out again there with Tony Raines in second spot, Mike Miller third, Brad Loney fourth, and Bob Seneca encountering just a little more difficulty there in some lap traffic, and now Sensiva doing the same as Dr. Yale Conley down on the inside, forcing the other cars going wide around him. Now Seneca is cut free and headed off towards the leaders, but the 4 leaders at this point have opened up a fairly significant amount of racetrack that Seneca's going to have to try to make up.
As they did from the drop of the green flag, Brian, but as we watch things unfold and the green flag laps uncoiled, Mike Eddy and Tony Raines pulled away from Mike Miller, who was about 6 or 8 car lengths back, and then Brad Loney had fallen into the clutches of Seneca. Again, as we go back to green, Loney is able to keep the leader's pace.
And there we see Bob Seneca leading the race for 5th. He's trying to pull away, get up there, go from one group to another. Sensiva not able to get the same kind of jump off the restart as Seneca did, and getting around some of the lap traffic. And there we see pushing from behind is the number 7, Gary St. Amant and Dave Sensiva there. Now Glenn Allen Jr., of course, in the pictures, and Scott Hansen in the white 53 AFCO Racing Wisconsin Aviation Monte Carlo.
Again, Weidner chopped it up, put it in the gravy, and it was the best gravy I've ever had.
They said they know that. I was talking to the fellows in Johnsonville. They had sent some of their famous links over, and when they got there, they arrived in horror to discover they'd ground them up, put them in that good old white gravy and biscuits.
My dad came up with me from Florida, and he said, "Boy, I wonder if I can get a quart of that to go." It was good stuff.
I'm not sure if the Johnsonville folks have ever seen their product treated quite that way, but it sure tasted good. Here we look at Glenn Allen Jr., the number 15 entry, the Eaglewood Construction CarQuest Pontiac. Glenn Allen currently in 4th in the point standings, had been 3rd until qualifying today. Just 3 points had separated he and Mike Eddy in the point standings, and qualifying caused them to reverse their positions. Mike Eddy out in front and beginning to pull away just a little bit as now Tony Raines goes around the 02 car of Ray Fullen that was involved in the off-track excursion a moment ago. Mike Eddy certainly hasn't dialed in. Well, he got the pole position, and now he's walking away. He's got the setup pretty well hammered out here at Anderson.
Most of his fellow drivers knew he would be a man, I guess, on an absolute mission tonight. That's an overworked phrase, but after losing an engine at Topeka and being completely out on the chassis tuning last weekend at a track where he's always very strong, Berlin and Grand Rapids, everyone knew that he was going to be absolutely ruthless tonight once the green flag came down. And we got cars together. Eddie Sharp and car number 71, Jim Cooper. Cooper momentarily airborne. Sharp is able to continue, and it looks like, again, as was the case for Steve Holzhausen, it might simply be body damage to car number 50, who got a little last-minute sponsorship from the local newspaper, the Herald Bulletin. So he's given him some airtime tonight, but not quite the way he would have anticipated. And there is Jim Cooper's car number 71. It's A.J. Cooper's car, and he's had John O'Neill in it, and now the local driver, Jim Cooper, doing the driving tonight. And it doesn't look like there's any damage, at least from the inside of the race car.
Very little damage obvious to the 71 car, and it appeared as though it was all cosmetic damage to the car number 50 of Eddie Sharp, the Sharp Racing Ford. Let's take another look at it here. We had a pretty good look at it in real time.
They tried to come 3 wide at Sharp, trying to make a pass it looked like on the outside of the racetrack. Almost got the job done. The rear end came out from under him, banged the outside retaining wall exiting 4, and just came down the racetrack right into and underneath, if you will, Jim Cooper's car number 71. Here's another angle. 3 wide. You don't do that at Anderson.
And I think the other car, a white car, was, yeah, there it is, the 97 car of Tim Sauter. The Delta Fawcett Victor Ford narrowly escaping any altercation there. He got around unscathed.
Did you realize
a little bit of a heart-stopping moment.
I didn't realize Mike Eddy was that close to that. And what might have happened is these guys might have been getting radio communication from their crew chiefs. The leader's coming.
Let's go down to Sandy, who has a little bit different angle on things.
Well, here's what Eddie Sharp left behind. Yep, some pieces, parts. If you could look all the way down pit row, he is in trying to get some work done on his car. It looks like he's putting on 2 tires, and they're also underneath. We'll be down there and find out what they're doing for you.
Well, Sandy doesn't have very far to go here at Anderson Speedway, but while she's hustling on down there to the Eddie Sharp pit, we're going to take another breakaway, look at some messages, and we'll be right back. Back to Prime Racing's live coverage of the Anderson Weidner 400 here at Anderson Speedway. Motorhome facilities for Group 5 sports and the AC-Delco Challenge Series are provided by Winnebago Industries. For more information about Winnebago, call 1-800-643-4892.
Speaking of Winnebago, one of our series principal sponsors, the sponsor of Ted Smokestad's car number 32, the folks at Super America have a Winnebago that's been reconfigured as a walkthrough exhibit of ASA memorabilia. One of the things that they have in there is one of Gary St. Amont's V6 engines mounted on a pedestal, and literally hundreds of people went through that Super America exhibit before the race here this evening.
There's Jim Cooper's number 71 car that we have grown familiar to be associated with A.J. Cooper, who climbed out of the car earlier this season, and as you mentioned, has had a couple of different drivers in there, and they were doing some quick white duct tape repairs to the right side there. It always amazes me how these teams are able to find duct tape that matches the paint scheme on their cars, so that when they do those tape job repairs, it really doesn't look that bad. There's Ted Smokestad's number 32.
And of course, Ted again tonight racing for his childhood idol, Bruce Sparman, who's in Minnesota, very ill here this evening. Our prayers and thoughts go out to Bruce.
Back to the restart here, which we've seen Mike Eddy do very well in trying to jump away. Once again, he, just like that on the backstretch, opens up a good, solid car length on Tony Raines. Mike Miller trying to stay close. Brad Loney, who had and perhaps continues to have slight handling problems, losing some ground already, and they are the front 4 running cars. Then we go back to a few cars that are down a lap that have been put there by the leaders. Bob Sineker contending with the 02. Ray Fullen, the Tony's Pete Raines' entry a little bit out of the picture here. There's Raines and Miller right now going nose to tail. He started on the outside of row 1 and the inside of row 2 respectively. And over this season and even last season, we have called Mike Miller Mr. Inside, and he appeared to have that car stuck pretty well down inside there in qualifying and practice yesterday. But tonight's the race, a little bit different situation.
That's why Mike is my choice, remains my choice despite Mike Eddy's lead here tonight to win this race, and he's really putting the pressure on Tony Raines for that second position. You know, as Mike Eddy continues to lead this race, we certainly by no means at the early going have conceded the event to him, because in 24 starts, and this just proves how tough this place is, a single victory for the Goodwrench Pontiac driver.
Well, that is pretty. He has led quite a few laps. I think he has led this race for a total of over 1,000 laps. He has earned, I think, 3 pole positions. But as you say, only 1 victory. To make a little bit more for the case of Mike Miller, this is only the 3rd time he has started in the top 10. He earned a pole position at Toledo and finished 2nd. And other than that, he had a 5th place start position where he finished 7th. But he has managed to park himself solidly in the point standings. And we have a little bit of it. Well, we're hearing a lot of gesturing in the booth here, which tells us something's going on out there. We see the tail end hanging off the 71 car, and that could be the reason for the flag. There's some pieces, parts, as Sandy Hain called it, lying in the middle of the racetrack. That would qualify as debris on the track, I would say, and reason enough to bring out a caution.
And again, Jim Cooper involved. And we'll take a look at the back part of his race car. You can see the tail panel.
For easy access.
Gone. Yeah. Potential debris, future debris, whatever you want to call it. And obviously those tail lights are not going to work the rest of the night tonight. And for those of you who are wondering, no, they don't really work, but obviously ASA, the cars most closely resembling their factory counterparts, and they've even gone to the extent of doing the tail lights and headlights.
Let's take another look here, see if we can zero in a little bit on what happened to that number 71 car, whether the parts just came off all by themselves or when well, they did. Looks like the duct tape job didn't quite hold. There goes one big chunk flying off, and a little bit of a heart stopper for Mike Miller, and a definite heart-thumping accident situation there, rather, for Brad Loney as he ran over that rear bumper. Now the crew, A.J. Cooper and the crew, are going to get another shot at getting that back end hung back on. Let's go to Sandy. You can see her in the picture. Sandy, what's up?
Well, what you're looking at right now is Jim Cooper's car. The last yellow they came in, they tried to tape some of this bodywork together, and obviously it didn't work because it just came flying off during some of the green flag racing. What they're going to do now is try to strip off as much as they can to get it back out onto the racetrack. Now, one of the things we haven't talked a lot about is the pit location here. This is a giant X here at Anderson, and it makes it very difficult for the drivers. Now, the first half of the pack, the fastest cars, turn into turn 2, and then they pull out of turn 1. The second half of the pack will turn in turn 4 and pull out turn 3. Very chaotic down here, and it's very important that a driver does not make a mental error, because a mental error can cost you seconds. And when you're in Anderson, seconds can cost you a lap.
What Sandy is saying there, Brian, because you enter the racetrack on turn 2, if you're in the fastest group of qualifiers, and then come back in turn 1, you really only have 2/3 of a lap on a quarter-mile racetrack to make a pit stop and get back on course without losing a lap to the leaders.
Well, and the other half of it, and we'll talk about it more after this commercial break, is if you have to wait all the way to turn 4 to get into the pits, you're losing ground without even stopping. We'll be right back. Chevrolet parked in the infield, right side up, and that does not bode well for the Anderson, Indiana driver in the 02 car, as it is parked. Transmission problem, we are understanding, is what is going on there. You see him trying to get some light underneath the cars. They're rolling under there to work on it. There's a little bit peek underneath. There's number 81 Harold Fair taking a little bit of a bounce off the wall and heading down towards the inside there with what appeared to be he needed to get down there in a big hurry. I think he's missing the right side tire on that number 81 car.
I looked up in time to see the contact for Harold Fair and the Build-A-Mold Dana Pontiac. You can see the right front wheel is completely off the machine. He took a hard ride into the turn number 2 wall, and he had been moving up in the field. That machine had been running very, very well, so maybe we'll get another chance to look at it. But a driver who has won here at Anderson in the past, has struggled over the last couple of years, thought maybe he would turn it around at a track where he's fared very well in the past.
Well, there is Sandy Hang with Harold Fair. What do you got, Sandy? She's checking.
Turn 1, and I couldn't stop the car, and it just went right into the wall.
So you lost the brakes, is that what you say?
Yeah, we had a tough break early on in the race. I thought the car was pretty good. You know, this Dana built 'em old Pontiac was running real well. We just was biding our time, but what are you going to do?
This puppy's smoking, and I know you want to get out of the car.
An early night for Harold Fair and the Spicer Build-A-Mold Dana Pontiac. Let's take another look at it. He's already in the wall right there, and that's kind of the end of his problems. The wall takes a little bit of a jog there, which gave him another shot down towards the infield. And watch these cars sneak by as Harold's heading for the pit.
A couple of them to the low side, Dave Sensiba and Dr. Conley, and then the rest of them as Harold comes on down the racetrack to the infield, choosing the high line. And obviously it was a one-car incident. He was running pretty much by himself on the racetrack.
Dave Sensiba in and out of the pits for the second, perhaps third time. His fortunes have certainly taken a turn for the worse. After 118 laps, here's a look at the top 10. Anderson Speedway, the Anderson Weidner 400, live on Prime. Glad you could join us here tonight. Brian Dreber up here in the booth with Rob Albright. Sandy Hang hustling around, chasing the stories down on the very unusual X-shaped pit road here at Anderson Speedway, a quarter-mile track. Let's take a look at the results from a little over 10 years ago. Recognize any of these names?
Wow, look at that. Bob Seneker, Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, the late champion Alan Kowicki, and Darrell Waltrip, who finished 5th after starting on the pole at Anderson Speedway. Pretty amazing.
Looking through the record books of this place is like looking at a who's who in stock car racing in the United States. Tiny Lund among the former winners in this race, steeped in history, as we mentioned at the very top of the show. And, well, we're going to be making a little more history here tonight. Just whose name will go in the record book? Well, we have no idea just yet. Right now, you got to like the chances of Mike Eddy and Tony Raines, who have started on the front row and led from the beginning, as Steve Olshausen did last year for all 400 laps. We're going to see another wire-to-wire win this year, Rob?
I suppose it's possible, of course, as Mike has led all 125 thus far. Raines was closing in just before the most recent caution, and Mike takes a high line as the 0-2 machine had been back on the racetrack. Ray Fullen now again on pit road.
So these two running pretty much alone. They kind of own the place right now. Mike Eddy at the number 88. Back there's a battle for third place. Mike Miller, who started inside row number 2, and Brad Loney, who started back on the outside of row 3. Those two racing for third place right now. The veteran Miller trying to hold off the youngster Loney from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Miller originally from up in the northern Midwest part of the country, racing in Wisconsin. Original home in Minnesota, but now makes his home in Marietta, Georgia, a suburb of the Olympic city of Atlanta.
Talking about leading this race wire to wire. The pit stops may determine the outcome as Loney continues to work very hard on Mike Miller's car number 18. He's going to make
inside. Miller's going to let him go.
He sure did. And Mike knew that he wasn't quite as good. Other less experienced drivers might have continued to contest, and Mike said, hey, it's better to nestle myself back here in 4th position than early this evening against the wall.
Apparently Brad Loney's car has certainly come back to him with the changing conditions here on the racetrack. It's interesting that a young driver like Brad Loney has outguessed a veteran like Mike Miller in terms of setup here, but it is a guessing game for the most part, and Brad, a very quick read and a very fast learner in this sport of stock car racing, the American Speed Association. He is currently 6th in the point standings, a couple of spots ahead of Mike Miller that he's racing, 1 spot ahead of on the racetrack.
And he figured this track out very quickly as a rookie. Came here, started 16th, finished 3rd. He's pulling away rather handily from Mike Miller, trying to reel in the front-running pair of Mike Eddy and Tony Raines. Finished 3rd in his first race, 5th in his second event. Had some problems the 3rd time out. But Brad Loney, and no real reason why he should know this racetrack. It's completely different from his home course, that at Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he cut his racing teeth there until he came to ASA. I think that's the only racetrack on which he had competed.
Bob Seneker not able to run away from anybody here tonight. He's pretty much been parked there in the same spot that he holds right now. He's running 5th. Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., and earlier it was Dave Sensiba, but now we see the 53 Scott Hansen there, and Sensiba is gone. So those guys running back there in 5th spot. And once Loney got around Mike Miller, he pretty much set sail. Clearly, he was being held back a little bit by the 18 car, and now he's pulled off 4 or 5 car lengths in front of Miller.
And you know what? The top 9 in points run the top 9 in this race. Dave Sensiba is in 10th position on the racetrack, I believe, in 10th in the points. So though they're not in their order that they're currently in the Hooter Super Cup point standings, the top 10 positions in this race are the top 10 in the point standings.
Did ostensible, in fact, not go down a lap in any of his couple of stops at this point. We're not really sure. He was able to get in and out very quickly. Sandy Hank with another story down in the infield.
I tell you what, guys, this infield is starting to look like a parking lot. You've got Jeff Neal's car down here, the 22 car of J.D. Summers, Jim Cooper, also Harold Fair. On the other side, Ray Skillman and Tim Sauter. This racetrack is brutal.
Well, it doesn't take much to fill up the infield here at Anderson either. It's pretty full with the war wagons, pit crews. Not a lot of pit activity just yet. Of course, one mandatory stop. It'll be interesting to figure out when that's going to happen, as you said earlier, Rob, and how the pit strategy is going to work out. Now Bob Seneca works the outside of Mr. Inside Mike Miller, and Loney got around. Miller let him go, and apparently Mike's not going to have a whole lot to say about Bob Seneca. Now Gary St. Amant and Glenn Allen Jr. trying to get by as well. So Mike Miller losing positions wholesale here at the racetrack.
I knew I shouldn't have picked Mike Miller to win the race. It's almost a certainty that by picking a guy, he's not going to have much luck. And, you know, he may have a tire going down. I don't know. I'm sure Sandy Hank will have an opportunity to go talk with the people in that crew. But he is definitely backpedaling, as now he's all the way back to 9th position.
Well, there's only one reason, or well, there could be any number of reasons why a guy would work backwards that quickly. We'd certainly like to get to the bottom of the problems with the number 18 car right now, and I'm sure we will in a moment. In any case, the Funco Land Atlanta Communications Pontiac that started outside row number 2 is not doing well at all right now.
It may be that the right front is a little bit down. As he went by our vantage point, I noticed the right front brake disc was really glowing bright red, and that may be a situation too. He may have lost the brakes in that car. Sandy, we've been able to sit up here and kind of guess. Tell us what's really going on with that car.
Well, Mike Miller's crew chief tells me that they blistered a right front tire, and that's what's happening right now, and that's why they're dropping behind.
Heat build up on the right front brake. Of course, it is very much a braking racetrack here, and Mike Miller trying to cool that thing off and hope for a caution flag. Perhaps well, that would certainly make the decision about when he would come in or not. He's sitting there kind of calmly behind the wheel right now, just sort of wheeling backwards through the field.
And this may be a situation that could plague some of the other drivers. A blistered right front tire means the car is leaning very hard on that right front corner, and just a misguess perhaps on chassis setup. No, he was able to keep it down at the bottom early in the race. 150 laps. Tony Raines again tries to close in on Mike Eddy's GM Goodwrench machine.
Well, all the work that a driver does to defend a position here on the racetrack is certainly a lot harder to make up ground than it is to hold on to it. Mike Eddy has made no mistakes thus far and has pretty much owned this place tonight, leading from the pole and from the green flag all the way through the 150-plus laps that we're showing right now. But we are still seeing a tremendous battle back here for 5th place with Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., and Scott Hansen as they wheel around number 50, Eddie Sharp. Bob Seneca's outdistanced himself just a little bit, and of course they've all moved up a spot because Miller slid back through the field.
Kind of interesting watching this threesome because every time Glenn Allen tries to put a move on Gary St. Amant, Scott Hansen will go the other direction and tuck underneath Glenn Allen's machine. So Glenn is in the unenviable position. He's kind of darned if he does and darned if he doesn't out there.
Well, he's kind of a sandwich between the Thunderbird of St. Amant and the Monte Carlo of Scott Hansen. And you're right, he not only has to try to attack for position, he has to defend one all at the same time.
It's 5th, 6th, and 7th positions. They're about half a straightaway back with 4th running Bob Seneca in car number 84.
Good race there. Glenn Allen Jr. showing a little bit of inside there at the same time that Hansen moved up the racetrack. Now Hansen shows a little bit of inside to Glenn Allen Jr. This really is and has been the best race on the track all night long.
Gary drifting higher and higher on the racetrack. Glenn will try to point the nose of the Eaglewood Pontiac underneath it, not able to do it, so Glenn's car obviously not getting the bite down on the low side, but enable him to get alongside and around Gary St. Amant. He needs to get at least halfway up the door going into the corner before he can cleanly make the pass.
Brad Loney about to be the 3rd car to put Mike Miller down a lap, so how quickly the fortunes change for the number 18 car. That's as we glance up on the track away from what you're seeing right here. Scott Hansen in the number 53 machine just biding his time, watching the 2 young drivers in front of him and hoping perhaps for a little bit of a mistake or maybe just studying the situation very carefully in order to just plot and plan the move that he might make and perhaps take both of them at the same time once just the right scenario sets itself up.
Whoa! Hansen gets a fender underneath and into Glenn Allen Jr. That's going to send him spinning and bring out a caution. Glenn's got to hustle if he's not going to lose a lap. He gets the machine turned around as Mike Eddy approaches, but he'll stay on the lead lap.
Doing a little bit of dirt deviling down there. There's the leader, Mike Eddy. The pace car will come out in front of him. And this is the yellow flag that a number of drivers, most notably Mike Miller, needs very much to get in there and replace that right side tire. And Glenn Allen Jr. Getting a little bit of a nudge from Scott Hansen that brings out the caution flag here at 162 laps.
And Glenn Allen will definitely bring that car on pit road along with Mike Miller. Having spun, that put him at the tail end of the lead lap. There's no reason for him to not. Now watch Glenn Allen. Is he going to try to make the move low? No, he does not. He stays up on the banking. Hansen is there.
Ooh.
And it looked like, I mean, that's one of those things where I think Scott had the line. Glenn maybe not realizing that he was there, tried to move down on the racetrack. Two cars at the same place at the same time. Very definitely not an over-aggressive move by Scott Hansen. Just an incident.
He just stayed where he was. And Glenn, actually, there's very little contact, virtually no contact.
And you know, you could see smoke from Hansen's car. He got on the binders. He tried to avoid hitting him.
Tried to, and it didn't really look like there was any actual contact between the right front of Hansen's car and the left rear of Glenn Allen Jr.'s. But it looks like everybody's coming in, and including Glenn Allen Jr. I'm pretty sure he flat spotted those tires pretty well. Let's go down to Sandy Hang, who's right there.
Well, earlier we were talking about this is a great opportunity for Mike Miller to come in and take care of the tires. He's doing that. Also, several other cars are taking advantage of this pit stop to come in. The number 7 car of Gary St. Amant is coming in. As you can see, Glenn Allen Jr. is just speeding out of the pits. Also, the 78 car, Steve Holtz, all coming in, taking on a splash of gas and tires.
Crew Chief Carl Hyland changing the right fronts. Fast Eddie on the back there. Didn't have such a fast stop that time. Miller's back out on the racetrack. And Gary St. Amant stayed out, apparently, and will be among the front runners. Oh, he came in, sorry. Gary St. Amant did come in with everybody else. We'll sort it all out for you in just a moment as we come back under caution here at the Anderson Weidner 400, Anderson Speedway in Indiana. See you in a minute. Here at Anderson Speedway, enjoying a fine race so far here tonight. The AC-Delco Challenge Series, the premier short track racing series, has joined forces with Short Track Racing Magazine. Seems like a natch, because it's the premier publication geared to short track racing fans. If you're a short track racing fan, you need to give them a call for subscription information. 1-800-468-7876. Let's go down to Sandy Hang with an update on Gary St. Amant.
Well, Gary's been taking that higher groove because his crew says that the brakes are just a little bit mushy on him. They came in and changed 2 right side tires in his last pit stop.
Back to green, and Mike Eddy still out in front. Tony Raines in second spot, taking his cue from the leader. Brad Loney third, Bob Seneca fourth, and Scott Hansen now being shown in fifth.
Baird now running interference momentarily for Mike Eddy, trying not to lose any more ground. Look at Baird trying to get a lap back in car number 26, and he's got pressure tires. Here's a battle for fourth. Scott Hansen, having dispatched with Glenn Allen, now takes fourth position on the restart away from Bob Seneca.
So Hansen playing the waiting game, much like the man he just passed, Bob Seneca, has been famous for. Now Mike Eddy, we understand, is down a cylinder on his race car. So the man who has led this race from the beginning is now starting to backpedal through the field, just as Mike Miller did earlier. Brad Loney going around him. Loney had been third. Of course, Raines is already around and gone. Mike Eddy, turn of bad luck for the driver of the black 88.
And there is no team that does any better preparation. Mike himself checks every nut, every bolt, everything, and he's got the best of equipment, and he's got the best of people to assist him, and you just can't turn around the luck sometimes, no matter how hard you try.
Spark plug wire in Toledo a year ago. We remember that. Preparation sometimes can turn its ugly head on you.
And a good point, Brian, because it could be something as insignificant as a spark plug wire again. Should we see another short-term caution, Mike could come on pit road and maybe rectify the situation.
And back up front now is Tony Raines, who started on the outside of the front row and has inherited the lead from the misfortune. Bill Baird still trying to get a lap back now from Tony Raines.
Well, Baird's got fresher tires in car number 26, and we've seen flashes of brilliance from the driver from Kentucky this season. He's had some really strong runs. He is a lap down, trying to get back on the leader's lap, and right behind him is Dave Sensaba, also a lap down. Now, these two guys battling for position and trying to get back on the lead lap. Now provides some problems for Brad Loney, who's inherited second position in the race in car number 33. And right behind Loney now in third is car number 53, Scott Hansen.
Flashes of brilliance from Bill Baird. I'm remembering a couple of weeks ago when I saw my life flash before my eyes in his airplane. He's quite used to that whole idea. In fact, we were talking about it a little bit here today. He said he was absolutely terrified and extremely uneasy the first time he went up, but as soon as he started doing aerobatic flying one day, he was fine. This is what he really enjoys doing, though, coming out here to the racetrack. Bill Baird, speaking of.
For those of you who don't know what Brian's talking about, we're not talking about just a garden variety airplane. We're talking about a Russian-built MiG fighter plane.
Actually, more accurately, an L-39 trainer fighter for you airplane buffs out there, but it was fast and it was fun. And here's Brad Loney now in second. Oh, a little bit wiggly all by himself there. Maybe he just looked in the mirror and saw Scott Hansen after seeing what happened when Hansen was behind Glenn Allen Jr. a while ago. Brad got a little wiggly all by himself. Now it is Seneker who's pushing the 53 of Hansen for that third and fourth place spot.
Speaking of Glenn Allen, you saw him for a moment in your frame. There he is right behind Bob Seneker. He's got fresh right side tires. He only lost one spot. He had a great pit stop. He had several lap machines separating him from Bob Seneker and Scott Hansen, but he may now be a factor to move up in this field with those fresh left side tires.
Well, there's the caution that Mike Eddy might have wanted, perhaps going to come out as Eddie Sharp's flinging pieces parts, as Sandy Hain called them, all over the racetrack right now. There went one. Left side about to give out here too, as duct tape starting to give up on Eddie Sharp's car. The crew trying to put the rear end of his car back in place. We saw that earlier. In fact, the caution has come out, so Mike Eddy will get the opportunity to go into the pit and see if it is something as simple as a plug wire or whether it's something a little more serious under the hood of the 88. Eddie Sharp's number 50 automobile, the Sharp Racing Ford, bringing out a caution flag here at 185 laps into this 400 lap event at Anderson Speedway. Naturally, we're going to take a cutaway here, give you a chance to look at some very important messages. Pay the bills, if you will. And Mike Eddy back out on the racetrack after a pretty frantic pit stop. Sandy Hain was right there.
I tell you what, Mike Eddy is coming back in again because it wasn't plug wires, it's something else. I talked to Howdy when he went back out. His crew chief Howdy Thomas says it could be the motor. They're going to take another look right now. Here he comes in. The crew is going to pull up the hood. And again, they're putting, nope, they're just going to fasten it down. It looks like, guys, I guess they feel like they've got it taken care of.
You know, we can kind of hear some ambient sound up here, and from the sound of things, my guess would be when they get all said and done, it's a valve spring, because it just had that kind of sound of a valve maybe that wasn't functioning and a cylinder not operating. So that's going to be my guess when we figure out what it is.
In any case, Mike Eddy has gone back out on the racetrack, and we have a new leader. And he's not the first car behind the pace car. He's not the second car behind the pace car. He's the third car, and he's number 15.
Glenn Allen Jr., the beneficiary of a spin at the hands of Scott Hansen. Probably now, he was hollering at Scott a few minutes ago. Now he's saying thank you because it allowed him to come on pit road, get fresh right side tires, and he is the leader.
As we go back to green flag here at 190 laps into this 400 lap event. For those of you that were with us last week, you may remember the very insightful work of Dennis Lampman, who is normally driving the number 9 automobile at ASA Stock Car Racing. We welcome Dennis back to the booth here once again. And first question I got to ask, you've been watching for 190 laps, seen anything that either impresses you or brings any particular insight at this point? Just kind of an overview, Dennis?
Well, I guess the leaders have been running nose to tail all the while, just minding their own business, trying to put in some laps, and back half of the field has been kind of rough on each other.
Kind of rough on each other. I have to agree with that. As Sandy said, it looks like a parking lot down inside there, and we're seeing parts all over the
and
place.
Tony Raines off the pace in car number 87 down the backstretch. And is it the same thing that happened to Mike Eddy? I don't know. That car is just crawling around the racetrack.
Well, very quickly, Glenn Allen Jr. Will be approaching up there, and there's the 87 of Tony Raines. Bill Baird sneaks by on the high side with Glenn Allen. So what kind of snake has bitten the 87 car here, Dennis? Have you any idea?
No idea for that.
Well, we'll have to rely on Sandy Hain to get word from crew chief Howie Ledow down there. This car, or at least the same man that prepared this car, prepared the winning car last year. Now we're understanding and hearing that it's a carburetor problem. So we'll get to the bottom of that here very shortly as Tony Raines goes down to the pit. Crew picks up the hood. It's ready to. They're kind of doing it at a leisurely pace, which tells me that they may not be able to fix it quickly. Sandy's with them, though.
Well, look what they're doing right
driving around Bill Baird, and we thought Bill might have gotten himself back on the lead lap with that round of lead lap cars stopping for pits, and not the case. Bill was, in fact, 2 laps down. He had just gotten 1 lap in arrears. Dave Sensiva, meanwhile, has again lost a lap to the leader, Glenn Allen Jr. Baird's spinning. Well, I'm having trouble tonight. Bill Baird spinning off of turn number 2 in car number 26.
Bill Baird going around there. We'll see if we can figure out what happened to the driver of the number 26 car. His car is already beat up just a little bit there, Dennis. And I don't know, were you, did you see what might have happened?
I think he just drove in a little too hard and got loose on him and lost it.
Real quick, the leader, Glenn Allen Jr., his record here, he's had 1 top 5 finish and 2 top 10s, but never a victory at Anderson Speedway. He is currently 4th in the points standings, had been 3rd, but Mike Eddy picked up a couple of spots in qualifying. So while the field circles around the racetrack behind the pace car and behind Glenn Allen Jr., we'll take another cut away from the action. Hi, everybody. There's a man. Problems is not much of a spectator sport. The crew of the number 87 car led by Howie Ledow, that's him peeking in on the right. You see Sandy Hang in the background. And they were digging a little bit deeper into that carburetor. Dennis Lampman, any thoughts of what it might be?
Well, they changed the motor last night or this morning, and they might have some trouble with linkage on it, that he starts slowing down, and when you can't work the throttle, you're hard to get them cars in the pits.
Have you ever had, you mentioned when we were away for commercial that it might have been the throttle linkage. That's what's moving right there. You've been working on what looks to be more of a, well, I don't know, maybe a jet popped out or something. What's over there on the right side of that carburetor?
Looks like they're checking the float level on the car.
Maybe they had a float stuck. It was flooding.
Could have been.
And the old farmer's fix for that is to tap on it with a hammer. Maybe they tried that already.
Yeah, a real big hammer.
There's the air box lying beside there, and these guys are digging through the war wagon, going deep into their bag of tricks right now, I would have to suspect. And this is not good news for the man that sat on the outside of row number 1, nor the crew led by the man that prepared the winning entry from last year.
As we remain under caution, let's try to tell you how the running order is at this juncture. Glenn Allen Jr. is the leader. Scott Hansen, the 2 of them got together earlier. Scott has about 4 lap cars between himself and Glenn Allen. He runs in 2nd position. In 3rd is Gary St. Amand in car number 7. 4th is Steve Holtzhausen in car number 78. In 5th position is 07 Todd Forbes. In 6th is Bob Seneker. 7th Brian Repner. 8th Brad Loney. 9th position in the last lead lap car is Mike Eddy's car number 88, and it sounds worse as it goes.
Back to green flag here.
And Bill Baird hard in the wall in turn number 1. That car simply did not turn, so he might have done some damage in that earlier spin as that day-glow red and black machine hard into the wall. You can see Bill moving around, so I'm sure he's okay, pulling the window net down, and that is the first sign that the driver is all right.
Well, that's going to pretty much end the night. You can see obvious disappointment as Bill drove the car into the wall. The only rational explanation is, as you said, he must have damaged the car earlier, and without knowing what it would do, got into it a little bit too hard. Here's another look at it. Dennis, any thoughts here?
Looks like the right front tire was flat.
Yeah, I was going to say, we saw sparks long before he was up in the wall.
Car simply did not turn, and the driver who's having a pretty good night is out of it. Here he is trying to get to the bottom of the racetrack. The car refuses to turn. Dennis, I remember a situation at I-70 a few years ago. You probably would just as soon forget, and you took a hard ride only on a half mile. Very similar situation to that. What, in your mind, in that split second, what do you do? What do you do physically? Pull your hands and knees up or brace, or what do you do?
Yeah, you brace for a pretty big hit. When we were going down, the car started slowing down, and I thought there would be something wrong with it, and we kept on making laps, and then the next lap it just was no notice and just drove straight into the concrete.
Sandy Hang is down on pit road with Tony Raines right now.
Right before the crash there with Bill Baird getting in the wall, Howie Ledow ran across to the Mike Miller pit, and he pulled out a carburetor. Looks like you do have carburetor problems. They're trying to change it right now. Tony, what was the track like right out there when you were running good?
It wasn't too bad. It was getting a little slick, but our motor ain't broke. I don't know. We got an ignition problem that we ain't found yet, I guess, and we'll just have to do some more work at home, I guess, to get ready.
Tony, you look exhausted. I mean, this looks like the heat is taking a toll. What is this heat like on a driver in a race like Anderson?
It's hot, you know. I'm in good shape. I sweat real good. It cools off, you know, so fix and go back at it.
Okay, that's Tony Raines.
Well, they're taking the carburetor off, putting another one on, and while they're doing that, we'll take a break away from the action, let these guys do their job, lap and update you as to how they've done when we come back to Anderson Speedway. Anderson Speedway under caution. There's a look at Mike Eddy, who we're showing as the last car on the lead lap. 9 cars on the lead lap, and there's the leader of the race. And a lot of our top points contenders remain at the top of the standings here in spite of all that's gone on. And there's a little bit of the rundown on Glenn Allen Jr. Not a smashing success here at Anderson so far, but there's a little bit of the story. And he certainly deserves his 4th place in the point standings right now.
You know, it's kind of the reciprocal of what we saw in the 1994 season. He won some races and just didn't have the consistency this year. The car has been fast. A couple of places it looked like he might have had the dominant car. And it just, you know, what a difference a season makes. Glenn definitely deserves a victory. Nobody would have predicted he'd get this far into things and not have a win this year.
There's Scott Hansen. Of course, his success here, we've already run it down. He's 2nd in the points, and he has had great success in this race. But there's a big number that tells us why he's 2nd in points. Look at that, 99.9% of the laps completed. Only one other driver has that record.
That's right, and that's why those 2 drivers are ranked 1st and 2nd in the point standings. 2,214 possible laps. Brian Refner leads the points. He's completed 2,113, and Scott Hansen 2,112.
All right, I have a question that may be only partly rhetorical. We haven't talked about Brian Refner since the very first, well, since before the first lap of this race. Now, Glenn Allen.
Our leader's got a problem. He was up almost into the wall in turn number 1 as Dave Sensiba had moved alongside to get a lap back, and it looks like he has cut down a tire. Several drivers have had this problem. Is there debris, Dennis, or are we simply seeing a situation where right front tires are going down because of maybe too much load on the right front corner?
Well, they might be rubbing on Panhard bar, sway bars on the right front or the spindle, and that might be cutting the tire open.
Well, Glenn Allen Jr. down in the pits, and Sandy is right there.
Now they're going to take care of the right front tire. They've already got the right rear tires taken care of. This is a costly pit stop for Glenn Allen Jr.
Scott Hansen, very quickly, there were 4 or 5 cars, including the 3 that are in front of Hansen right now, and a couple more that got their lap back very quickly when Glenn Allen Jr. went up high on the track. But now Scott Hansen, the new leader, has put a couple of the cars that unlapped themselves a lap down once again, and these 3 are trying to stay out of trouble. There we see Joe Knott, number 48, get into the back of Rick Beebe just a tiny bit, and Hansen pushing hard from behind as the new race leader.
And Glenn simply slowed down on going into turn number 1. Actually, I think he already knew he had the problem right there. Gives sense of a room, tries to keep the car off the wall, and does so successfully. And again, we have a yellow as Mike Miller has spun coming up turn 2.
Well, Miller had been one of those that unlapped himself and apparently saw the opportunity to get himself back out on the lead lap and make up a lot of the positions. He had been shown 11th, the 2nd car on 1 lap down. And now he, perhaps a little bit overzealous, turns the Funco Land Atlanta Communications Pontiac, brings out another caution flag.
Wow, and suddenly Scott Hansen looks in commanding position, though we've seen an ebb and flow here tonight. You really can't hand it to anybody. And Dennis Lamon, what do you think is the main contributing factor to Scott Hansen's success here?
Well, them guys work really hard on their cars all week long, and they do a great job maintaining them and going through every nut and bolt and making sure that things are done right.
It seems like there must be a lot of stuff on the racetrack, because now Miller's problem, a right side tire down, that probably is what caused his problem, not overzealousness. Although he's been accused of that in the past. He's got a right side rear tire down, and a lot of guys coming in, and apparently there is some debris on the track that's causing tire cut down problems. We'll try to get to the bottom of that, think about it just a little bit more, and we'll be back here at Anderson Speedway in just a few minutes. A little over 200 laps gone. Caution here at Anderson Speedway, and let's see if we can run down the new standings in this race. Scott Hansen, Gary St. Amant, Steve Holtzhausen, another name we haven't called yet tonight. Todd Forbes doing a nice quiet job of staying out of trouble and in the top 5, along with Bob Seneker.
Right behind Seneker is the number 5 car of Brian Refner, and then Brad Loney in car number 33. So the top 7 nose to tail on the racetrack, and this succession of yellows has worked into the hands of Mike Eddy in car number 88, who remains on the lead lap in 8th position. Interesting note about Brian Refner. No driver in ASA history has ever won the championship without a victory. He hasn't accomplished it yet, but he's in the catbird seat at the moment, although his nearest pursuer, Scott Hansen, leads this race.
10 races gone, not a victory for Brian Refner, and if he would be able to win the championship without winning a race, he would be the first to do so. There's our new leader, Scott Hansen, on the racetrack right now as they circle. Right behind him is Gary St. Amant, and one of the most likable and personable drivers on the circuit, also winless this year. And of course, the season might have taken its most serious downturn for him as he whacked into the wall at Topeka on the road course. He now runs second in this race. Dennis, what do you think of the chances for Gary St. Amant picking up his victory?
Well, I think he'll pick one up here. He did it at I-70 this year. I don't want to correct you, but
that's right. That's right. Sorry.
He drove underneath me when he was supposed to be going around me on the green. So
how soon we forget?
Yeah.
Dennis didn't forget.
No.
Well, yeah.
Not at all.
Well, I got a mouse in my pocket. That's why I said we. Here we go as Scott Hansen jumps out on the restart. Gary St. Amant, and then running third on the racetrack is Holtzhausen with that damaged right front. There's Bob Seneker. The driver's going to start working for position, and if not now, when?
Oh yeah, I think they're going to start racing for position now. They got more of the lap cars, and the ones that were wounded are off the racetrack now. And the crew at the racetrack moved up this year on us. They put some traction device down or some liquid. They were having a lot of trouble in practice getting the cars to stick on the bottom because they were going in so fast and they were so soft that they were just bottoming out and getting loose. So some of them worked on it, they were running the bottom, and some just went to the top.
8 cars in qualifying. In fact, because of that new sticky substance they put on the racing surface, eclipsed the old track record. Of course, that previous standard was set by Johnny Benson a couple of seasons ago. Now the front two beginning to pull away from the third place car. We're looking at Brian Refner, who continues to work really hard on Bob Seneker. There's a trio of Fords. Todd Forbes, actually a quartet of them, followed by the Chevy of Brad Loney. It's Steve Holtzhausen, Todd Forbes, Bob Seneker, Brian Refner, and there is Brad Loney, who was in early a couple of times in car number 33, is now beginning to work his way back toward the front of the field, running in 7th position, and only Mike Eddy behind him remains on the lead lap.
Apparently the young crew of young driver Brad Loney has worked out their problems and have him back in contention here. And just to stay in the top 10 in this race, and even just to stay on the lead lap, you have to consider that a measure of success, Dennis. 230 laps in, and if you're still on the lead lap, you're in good shape.
Yeah, staying on the lead lap here is pretty rough. You got guys running into each other and spinning, and you get caught up in it once in a while. And I know we finished here 7th or 8th, being 8 or 9 laps down, so you got a pretty good shot here.
We asked a lot of the guys beforehand. You know, we've asked them many times. You know, do you like this place? Do you hate this place? We talked about Gary St. Amant as being one of the few that said he liked it. What about you?
Well, this place is one of the places like I-70 and a couple other places we go to is just about anything works there. You sort of got a feel for the car and the racetrack, and it's a neat place to run.
Oh, Dave Sensiba's car showing some smoke. Let's go down to Sandy Haig once again.
Talk to his crew members, and they tell me that the motor has picked up a miss. That's what's going on with Dave Sensiba's car right now.
Picked up a little more than a miss. I'd have to say something is definitely a miss on the number 4 car there. The entry of Dave Sensiba, last year's Rookie of the Year winner in the Western Michigan Chevy Dealers Lane Automotive Chevrolet. Pushing a lot of smoke out the back there, and everybody's going to be trying to get around him as quick as they can, Dennis.
That's for sure.
The know-it-all brothers keep a chart of who's on the lead lap, and they circle the drivers that are a lap down, and we've worn out the paper around number 4 because he's been on the lead lap, off on, several times tonight. I think the fun we're having with the chart may be over as far as Dave Sensiba is concerned.
Well, the last official scoring position he was shown in was 9th, and of course that is no longer accurate. Here's a battle for 4th place. Todd Forbes, who has been very quietly and capably holding on to his position there. He started this race in 14th place, and he has moved up quite handily, thank you very much, to 6th, and he's staying there very well, doing a good job of it.
Right behind him is Brad Loney, and there comes Glenn Allen Jr. into frame. Car number 15, 3 laps down, having to stop under green. And look at Brad Loney working on Todd Forbes. Gets right alongside and takes a spot away. Loney into 6th, Forbes drops to 7th.
Dave Sensiba in the pit. Sandy Haig is there. What's the problem?
Well, it appears to be twofold. First, they think they might be overheating. Also, I told you that the motor developed a miss. They're taking a look at it right now, trying to diagnose.
assuming we see a couple more caution flags, have we seen the last of the lead lap pit stops, Dennis?
I think so. Scott went on win this thing, I think, last year on one pit stop, and that was his plan for track position, and probably just stay out there and make laps now.
Forbes slowing down. Looks like he may have a tire going down. It might have made it on one pit stop last year. We've seen a lot of cars blistering tires already tonight. Cutting tires or blistering tires, and it may be that the sealer that they put on the racetrack, or this traction agent, is causing them problems. Now, Mike Eddy was on pit road half a dozen times after developing what sounded like a miss beneath the hood of car number 88, but he's managed to remain on the lead lap, though he's about 2/3 of a lap behind Scott Hansen.
Be interesting to know what the cure was, what the problem was, and what the cure was on the number 88 car. Maybe we'll get Sandy to check that one more quick time with Howard Thomas. Still looking at it. Sorry.
You know, I was going to say, the fact that he is so far behind Scott, I think cautions have done more than anything to keep him on the lead lap. And Mike may be better on 5 cylinders, and a lot of the other drivers are on the full complement of 6.
Forbes, Ted Smokestad, a rookie contender there in the number 32 Super America entry, going at it a little bit. There's Rick Miller. Now, we talked a little while ago with Rick Beebe out of the race, and interestingly enough, in the standings right now, they're only a few spots apart, and Rick Miller being shown 13th, Beebe's being shown 19th, but Rick Beebe is out of the race and 45 laps down as Forbes slows and goes into the wall, couldn't keep it out of there. Definitely debris on the racetrack, and it's cutting tires pretty often around here right now.
But Beebe is not, in fact, out. We thought he was. He was out for a while, but he's come back on the racetrack after a tour on pit road.
I was going to say, I watched very distinctly at least 2 complete laps there and did not see him on the racetrack. But again, Rick Miller in the number 31 car, who's second in points, 127 points behind Rick Beebe in the Pat Shower Memorial Rookie of the Year competition, is being shown 4 or 5 spots ahead of Rick Beebe. So Beebe needs to stay out there, and I think you'll probably concur, Dennis, stay out there and just limp around and just hold on to as many positions as possible.
Yeah, that was our strategy when we raced. We had to be in position to win, and it just made laps, so you kept your position in your lap.
Number 31, Rick Miller running second right now behind Glenn Allen Jr. on the racetrack alongside the pace car. We're going to take another break here, get a chance to get caught up a little bit. Here's another look at the top 10. It's a little different now. Prime Network's live coverage of the American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge Series, the Anderson Weidner 400 from Anderson Speedway in Indiana. Brian Drever, Rob Albright, and Sandy Hang here enjoying a great night of racing so far. There's the 07 car of Todd Forbes, is out of the race and being interviewed there by the radio folks, our radio counterparts here at Anderson Speedway. We're getting ready to go back to racing with Scott Hansen in the lead, Gary St. Amant in second, Pat Bordeaux in the 44 car, the 3rd car on the racetrack, Jones 15th, and down 6 or 7 laps at this point.
Steve Holzhausen out of the race in car number 78. As we go back to green, we'd like to say hi to Sandra Neiswander, big ASA racing fan in Rockford, Illinois, recuperating at home tonight. And Terry Allen, Glenn Allen Jr.'s mom, back after a long illness. We say welcome back to Terry tonight.
And now Mike Miller's number 18 car strewing some parts on the racetrack. Brad Loney got very quickly underneath Bob Seneker and around, but we're going to have another caution come out as the right front bodywork of the number 18 Funco Land Atlanta Communications Pontiac finally exceeded the adhesive capacity of the, they must have put that 70-mile-an-hour duct tape on that car too. Sandy Hang down in the infield, more information for us?
Well, I'm with Steve Holzhausen right now, and you know, guys, last year Steve led the race, flag to flag, pulled in a great victory, and now motor problems. What's the track like out there, and how do you feel knowing that you're done for the night?
Well, it's really greasy out there. We were just biding our time. You know, the Motorsports Thunderbird was running real good. We did a little tire strategy there and got ourselves in a good position. We were just sitting to ride the race out. We might have had to come in one more time, but there's a lot of race left, so we're going to ride it out and see what would happen. And we lost the cylinder.
What about that first little skirmish that you had? It looked just like cosmetic damage. Was that all that happened?
Yeah, just lost the fender.
Okay, back to you in the booth.
Well, it's a good thing they don't need fenders to go racing, because there'd be a whole lot more guys out of this race. We're under caution at Anderson Speedway, and we'll be back here in just a few minutes. Dennis Lampman, of course, in the booth with us, and getting ready ready to go back green here with about 130 laps of racing left, and that's a lot of racing here at Anderson Speedway. Even though it isn't very far in distance on a quarter-mile racetrack, there's a lot that can still happen here. Dennis Lamb and Rob Albright, with Scott Hansen leading. Any thoughts right now as to what we might see in a few more?
I don't know. Bob Seneker came in and it looked like he was getting a flat tire. I don't know which one, but he changed them now and he's getting around there pretty well. So he might have the cards in his hand to win this thing then if it all plays out right for him.
What did that caution flag fly just at the perfect moment for Bob Seneker as he was able to come on pit road. Now got a lot of lap cars between himself and the lead running quintet, but he's making hay through the field and trying to close the gap there in that Lane Automotive Johnsonville Ford Thunderbird, car number 84.
The sneaker, it's hard to sneak through the field when you got a television camera pointed right at your race car. So you at home know what Bob Seneker's up to. Maybe the others in the field out there don't. And Rob, you asked a question during the commercial break. Guess who's in fifth? Well, the folks with the satellite dishes at home know, because we were talking about it. There he is, Mike Eddy.
And he's closing in on Brad Loney in car number 33 on the restart. Now, he had tucked right in behind Brian Refner under the last segment of green flag racing. Now he's really got his hands full with the lap car number 18 of Mike Miller. And we're looking at our scoring system here, and it looks like Mike is one lap down, being shown in 7th position.
Six cars on the lead lap. Of course, a quarter mile isn't much of a lap. You lose a little bit of ground and find yourself a lap down pretty quick. Here's Mike Eddy sitting currently 3rd in the point standings after he had led after winning the first 3 races this season. Looked unstoppable. Now he sits 3rd in points.
Now it looks like he may be falling back just a bit again in car number 88 as Glenn Allen reels him in. Glenn, of course, cut down a tire, went 3 laps down, stopping under green. We're looking at the chart that shows Glenn nonetheless in 10th position.
Let's go down to Sandy Hang with an update and some more information about the 88 car.
Well, I've been in and out of the pit, so we're talking to Howdy Thomas, the crew chief for Mike Eddy. You remember earlier, he was dropping back. There seemed to be a problem with the motor. Everyone was speculating. Was it plug wires, valve spring? Howdy Thomas says he doesn't know what it is. He just knows the car is hanging on. Also, you remember Mike was throwing things out of the window? Well, that was his radio. The radio was staying keyed. So his crew could not talk to him and couldn't tell him what they saw in the car. So that's why he got out, and they did replace the radio during a pit stop.
Well, I guess you don't need a radio if you're Mike Eddy or anybody else, so he heaved the thing out the window there, Dennis.
Yeah, well,
that's probably pretty exasperating, actually, though, when the radio stays stuck on.
Brian Refner is closed right on the heels of Gary St. Amant's wins Ford Thunderbird. They've gotten almost side by side, but this is the best door-to-door racing. Well, we looked at it momentarily. Mike Miller trying to get around Brad Loney. He is still a lap down, but obviously faster than the red car number 33. And there's that warp to 2nd position.
They got another caution flag out, and apparently the door-to-door racing between Brad Loney and Mike Miller has turned into a nightmare for Mike Miller, and the steering wheel's coming off, and it appears as though the night might be over for the driver of the number.
Look at that. I think it's over.
Yeah.
Hard contact. Severe damage to both sides of the race car. Didn't see the incident, and we're sitting high above the grandstand in turn number 1. I felt the impact before I actually saw what happened.
Well, we certainly felt the collective intake of breath here in the booth. A lot of everybody gasping. That probably slowed the rotation of the earth momentarily there, the way everybody reacted to the impact there. Maybe we will get a look at it. Now Jeff Brown, of course, getting a lot of airtime here tonight, looking inside the car, and here they are side by side.
Miller was underneath him, Loney on the high side. Let's see what happens. And Brad gets into the right rear corner of Mike Miller, sending the right front into the wall. Loney up in the air. Somehow he managed to get through. Brad got him pretty good there.
Well, Mike was shown in 7th place before the incident. Here's a look from the speed shot one more time. Dennis?
Yeah, I just ran out of room to get out in front of him. And today I seen Mike, and he said to say hello to his mom and dad, and I told him he'll shake his hand and say he's all right. So he's out of the car.
Not looking very happy. There's the Marietta, Georgia driver with only one victory in his long American Speed Association career. Took probably 15 years off, though. He's one of the originals from this series and a contemporary of guys like Dick Trickle and people that go back a ways, and Mike Miller striding towards the infield there. Not the least bit happy about his early night.
Hearing a lot in a lot of areas of motorsports about the 9-to-1 compression engine, and Mike Miller, one of the originators of that concept.
Gary St. Amant circling the racetrack, sitting in second spot behind Scott Hansen. And there's Mike Miller, upset, obviously, talking to another one of the American Speed Association officials. Some of his crew is gathered around. That's Jim Duffy there, the distinctive profile of Jim Duffy, the jack man. There's Fast Eddie, the tire changer, and the rest of the Mike Miller crew. Coleman, his partner in the aviation business back in Georgia. They're all trying to calm him down. All he wants to do is have a word with somebody over what happened out there.
I wonder who that somebody is. Could it be that guy right there?
Well, we're getting a clue from our quick and astute camera crew. They might be thinking that just might be the object of a little bit of Mike's attention here. Brad Loney in the 33 car. And Sandy Heng is with Mike Miller. Let's see if she can get to the bottom of it.
Mike, very obviously you look upset. What exactly happened out there in turn 1?
Brad Loney stuffed me in the wall. Totaled my race car. There was no reason for it.
Your car was fast all night, and we noticed that you cut a tire early on. You know, it's a tough racing circumstance.
Yeah, the Funko Land Atlanta Communications Weidner-powered Pontiac was on a rail tonight, and I don't deserve this.
You know, hold back, you might say. He's not in any mood to hold back tonight, Dennis.
No, I guess not. He's pretty upset.
Well, Mike Miller looking on as they remove his damaged race car. Brad Loney accused, and perhaps rightly so. I'm not going to be the judge of that, of stuffing the car into the wall. Gary St. Amant circling the track in second position. A lot of young fans at home hang on the every word, as we've said, of our colleague Josh Duvall. Will hang no longer. Here's Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Duvall. And this week we have Gary St. Amant, driver.
A little bit of gas this weekend about his requests for autographs. He made the mistake of telling me that somebody asked him for his autograph at a mall in Charlotte. And there's a look at the 48 car. What's up?
Haven't talked about him too much tonight. Joe Knott lost a lap, but he's hung tough. He's in 6th position as a result. He went down fairly early in the race, and about 3 cars behind, we're going to pick up that Super America Chevrolet of Ted Smokestad, who was, I think, the 2nd car to go a lap down tonight. And since that point in time, we're 293 laps into this race. He's not lost another lap to the leader, being shown in 7th position. Now, the rookies were told in the drivers' meeting, make laps tonight and survive, and you might be surprised at the result. Here's a guy that's running solidly in the top 10, 7th position, probably was ready to throw in the towel in the early going of this race. What a great night for both Joe Knott and Ted Smokestad.
Ted Smokestad 6th in the rookie point standings going into this event, but attrition has more than taken its toll on some of the drivers against whom he is racing for that season-long battle. The next closest one is, and there's Mike Miller apparently making up for something he might have said earlier with a little hug there, and he's calmed down just a little bit.
They could have probably gave themselves a little room. Mike knew he was out there, and Brad wanted to get by him. They weren't racing for position, so maybe he should have had some, maybe Mike...
That's what we felt up here.
Yeah.
Loney got into Miller, but I don't think Miller was totally blameless. It looked a little more, you know, give and take on the replay. Also, Mike was a lap down, and he wasn't trying to race Loney to get back on the lead lap. He still had 4 other cars to pass, so I don't know. You know,
exactly.
2 ways to look at it.
Racers are racers, though. They get side by side. They're going to go after it. You know, a lot of times it probably takes a real conscious effort, doesn't it, Dennis, to think about things like, well, I'm a lap car, the other guy's not. You know, I mean, there's a guy next to you. You're just like a thoroughbred going for the finish line. You're going to race.
Yeah, sometimes when we see a hole, we got to take it, and it might be the wrong place to be at that time.
And thinking about it later, you'll calm down a little bit and recognize that, well, maybe you should have backed backed off a little bit at that moment. Well, no backing off right now up front on the racetrack. One thing that comes readily to mind here, we certainly don't have quite as many cars out there, and the ones that are out there have pretty well found their way of going around the track at different speeds. Sandy Hang with an update on Brad Loney down in the infield.
Well, I'm down here with Kurt Beckler, the crew chief for Brad Loney. Kurt, what exactly happened?
Well, we finally figured out that the 18 car was a lap car, so we was going to let him go. He widened the corner out a little bit going into one there. Time Brad could get backed out, they got hooked and just got together. Just was a misfortune to think. We had a good chance at winning it, we think. Winnebago Flex Fuel Chevy is running good tonight. Bad deal.
Showing Brad Loney now 8th position, 1 lap down, right behind Ted Smokestad, and trying to catch car number 32 for a spot. He has gotten around, in fact, Smokestad, so Loney is up to 7th position. He'll now try to close on Joe Knott.
Here's Brian Refner, who hasn't gone completely unscathed here. We do see some marks on the right side of his race car. And Bob Seneker's Bluebird number 84, the Johnsonville Foods Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird, looks pretty clean.
Yeah, he knows how to sneak around these racetracks, these long races, and be there at the end.
Dennis, what does a caution do to the tires? Just before the last caution, Brian Refner was all over Gary St. Amant. St. Amant was having trouble keeping pace with Scott Hansen. Now Gary's right with Scott, and Refner's lost about 10 car lengths.
Looks like he's having a little trouble through the middle and getting off on we got bleeders on the tires that bleed off air, and it just one might have stuck, and Steger might have went away on him.
Those little bleeders I've seen through the course of the last couple of seasons, of course, since I've been involved in the American Speed Association. That is quite literally that 10-cent part that can cost you a race. So we put men on the moon. We can't make a bleeder that works consistently.
Yeah, they got them out there, and they work pretty well. There's some that plug into the wheel, some that stay in the wheel, and sometimes they catch a piece of dirt on a caution and they stick, and tire pressure goes way up, or next time they start leaking. For the most part, the tire guy works on that real hard to keep them in shape, so we don't have that kind of problem.
Right again, narrowing the gap with Gary St. Amant as Seneker tries to keep pace. Gary now has fallen about 3 car lengths behind Scott Hansen.
And what a difference a season makes, the changing fortunes between the 5 and the 4 car. Last year, of course, they were locked together in their battle for the Rookie of the Year honors. Dave Sensiba ending up emerging from that, and now this year it's Brian Refner's good fortune that has him on top of the point standings overall, not the rookie standings, but the overall point standings. Dave Sensiba in 10th on points this year, so their seasons have gone slightly different this year.
If things stayed the way they are right now, with Scott Hansen leading, if he goes on to take the checkered flag and Refner happens to finish 3rd, Hansen would appropriate the points lead for the first time this season. He came in 10 back. He's led laps. Brian has not done that yet, so that would give him a 15-point advantage. If Refner is able to get around St. Amant, unless my math fails me, if he finishes 2nd behind Scott Hansen, they would be deadlocked going to Milwaukee next weekend.
Very interesting indeed. Scott Hansen's car looks mighty clean, too. Here's the attrition in the race, which we saw Ray Skillman. Jeff Neal is not behind the wall. He is back out on the racetrack. So was behind the wall for the 75 car, and there's some of the rest.
It is still Scott Hansen, Gary St. Amant, Brian Refner, Bob Seneker, and Mike Eddy hanging on to the lead lap, just staying out of trouble. Joe Knott 6th, Brad Loney 7th, Ted Smokestad 8th, Glenn Allen shown in 9th position, and Rick Miller up to 10th in car number 31.
Well, apparently quite a few of the rookies took it to heart about going out there and just making laps, because we're also seeing Pat Bordeaux in the number 44 car making laps, Rick Miller making laps, Ted Smokestad making laps, 3 rookies in the top 12, and Eddie Sharp also making laps in the number 50 car, 4 rookies in the top 14, and a lot of drivers out of this race.
There's that battle again, raging for 2nd position, a pair of Fords. It's now the Monte Carlo of Hansen leading. Fords running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
There's Jeff Neal, the split Fire All-City Hardwood Chevrolet. Of course, he was so upset and incensed there up in the turn. Felt like he had been done wrong. His crew able to put the car back out there. He's certainly not racing with anybody, just circling the track, making laps, and actually being shown in 22nd spot right now.
I heard something surprising about Milwaukee next weekend. The West Coast 1 drifter and hot shot in the Super Truck Series, Ron Hornaday Jr. apparently has built an ASA car. A lot of guys seem to want to do that these days, and he'll make his ASA debut next weekend in Milwaukee.
For a good reason. There's Ted Smokestad allowing the race between Gary St. Amant and Brian Refner to drive on by as he continues to circle the track in the number 32 Super America Chevrolet. These two guys, best race on the track right now. There's Pat Bordeaux, the hoodless number 44, BASF Finish Master Chevrolet, another rookie driver making laps, while two young drivers go after second place here behind Scott Hansen. Hansen's success, well, it's too early to say continues, but with 75 laps to go, he could be looking at another top two finish here and have a perfect record in all his starts.
Certainly looks that way, and as we run under green, he's got to love it, as St. Amant is no longer too concerned about Scott Hansen in front of him. He's just going to defend second position on the racetrack as they lap around Dr. Yale Conley in car number 3, and Yale not having that bad a night, shown in 13th position.
Now there's Hansen, and these two guys in their race have actually made up quite a bit of ground on Scott Hansen. He continues to wheel his way through traffic, making another lap on the number 31 car of Rick Miller, but now you can see that St. Amant and Refner have pulled up, and it's really a three-car battle, and here comes Bob Seneker to make it 4.
So show you just how tough it is for the big dogs of ASA to win at Anderson. We mentioned Mike Eddy, 1 win in 24 starts. Bob Seneker has won here 3 times, but the last time a decade ago, back in 1984. At the breakfast this morning, I said 2 decades ago, and I've for years tried to make him an old man, and I really did to him this morning. I may not be welcome back here at Anderson, by the way. The mayor was there with a proclamation. The last 2 years, it's the mayor's breakfast, but he had sent an emissary. So when I introduced him, I said it must be an election year. But he's pretty quick on his feet, and Mark Lawler said, yep, and we've got voters' registration slips in the back of the room. And you know what? He knew nobody in that room was from Anderson. You know, yet he was going to give him a registration anyway. And here is Brian Refner, almost, and is alongside Gary St. Amant, has the advantage. And if he's just able to keep it down at the bottom, Gary will have no choice but to give up second position. Now will squeeze back in, or tries to. Bob Seneker won't let him do it. Bob is alongside also and is going to take third.
Well, that's Bob Seneker, classic strategy. Sits back there, watches somebody else set up the move, and follows them right through. So just like that, Gary St. Amant loses 2 spots. One to the young driver, Brian Refner, and the other to the KG veteran, Bob Seneker, who has been around this series, apparently showing the first time he raced here was in 1977, and his success here began in earnest in the 1980s.
We talked about just how tough it is to survive 400 laps at Anderson, and here we have, running in first and second position, the 2 drivers first and second in total numbers of laps completed. And Dennis Lampman, Brian Refner has caught Scott Hansen in car number 53, and for both of these Wisconsin-based drivers, Anderson Speedway has some similarities to Rockford in Illinois, where both of them have had some success.
Just caught a glimpse of Gary St. Amant's car there, and it appears as though he might be having a minor handling problem, just at a glance. Maybe we'll look at that a little bit closer, but Brian Refner certainly has made a move at the right time. This is a veteran driver move here that Refner has done, Dennis, and you've got to be impressed with the way this young man has moved himself up from the rookie ranks right to a contender and points leader in this season. He's really showing a lot of maturity for a young driver.
Yeah, I met him many years ago in Wisconsin, and knew his father, and his dad had some talent and knew how to set up a race car and make a long race, and he has developed that same patience and stuff. I didn't think he was going to be up this far 20 laps ago. Looked like he was struggling pretty hard there, but everything came together for him. He's running really well.
Well, he's trying to show a little something to Scott Hansen there. He nudged just a little bit down on the inside. Of course, getting around the number 53 cars, no short order.
No short order. Scott is not easy to pass for the lead. And he'll race you as hard as he can and give you room to run, and maybe he'll come back after you later. You know, he takes 1 lap at a time also.
Well, Refner trying to show a nose down underneath. Hansen, to his credit, holding his line up high, and he's not going to chop down. Oh, Refner getting a little bit loose there, and very loose right there, as now Bob Seneker almost makes it by, but Refner glues the car back down on the inside. Those two go at it. Actually, a little bit of tire smoke coming off as their tires rubbed each other, it appeared.
Refner has to give ground as Eddie Sharp was on the bottom of the racetrack, and Seneca now in a position to challenge Scott Hansen. I'm not sure he has as strong a car as Refner does, though.
Well, again, Scott Hansen tough to pass. 56 laps remaining, so at least there's a lot of times around the racetrack for these two to try to figure out a way around the number 53 car, the AFCO Racing Wisconsin Aviation Chevrolet. Here's Brian Refner, the current points leader, has not won a race this year, but has started from the pole once and has been a part of 99.9% of the laps run with the leaders.
5 top 5s, 9 top 10s. His career best finish came in June of this year at Jennerstown Speedway, finished second to Bob Seneca and ahead of Mike Eddy, and then finished third at Brainerd on the road course. And Dennis, what happens over the course of a single winter to a guy that was runner-up in the rookie points but wasn't even in the top 10 in 1993? Is it just finally gaining familiarity with racetracks?
Yeah, they had a pretty good crew chief. They had difficulty in the middle of the season last year, and then they had to regroup and put everything together themselves, and it was a lot of trial and error. And they work on their car a lot of hours. There's only 2 of them that work on it full time, and they're there quite a bit of the time. And they wanted to show their owner that they can do it, and they're doing it.
Leaders closing in on the back end of Mike Eddy's Pontiac, about to put car number 88 a lap down. And he's been nursing a sick car all night long, practically. Cautions at advantageous times have allowed him to stay on the lead lap. And shortly we may have only 4 cars on the lead lap as Scott Hansen goes to the top.
That seems almost ludicrous, but now I think back, Dennis, when you said, you know, you can finish in the top 10 and be 15 or 20 laps down here. And, well, in fact, we're showing the top 10 at 5 laps down. So 10th place, Rick Miller, being shown 5 laps behind the leader. Hasn't gotten quite as bad as you mentioned before, but only 4 cars on the lead lap, and it happens as we speak.
Yeah, this racetrack's been pretty tough on us, on all of us last couple of years, and we do have some tough finishes like that. Cars being in the race at the end.
Bob Seneca, I think, may have a problem in car number 84 as Brian Refner went to the top of the racetrack and drove right by. Now Gary St. Amant is closing, and again it looks like maybe a right front tire for the blue car number 84.
Seneca definitely having some trouble right now. No reason except for mechanical problems for him to be slowing down this quick. We're told now that the motor missing just a little bit, and so the fortunes for number 84, Bob Seneca, turn on a dime.
And by the way, Brad Loney's car number 33, you just saw him flash by, fastest car on the racetrack, it looks like, as he's gotten around Mike Eddy, and now is closing on Gary St. Amant. There he is. St. Amant is in 3rd position, and there is car number 15, Glenn Allen, going above Bob Seneca, but Allen's still a couple of laps down.
Bob Seneca pedaling back through the field. In a matter of moments, we might only have 3 cars on the lead lap. At this point, with just over 40 laps to go in the race, we're going to lose our colleague Dennis Lampman. He's going to go over and give the radio guys a hand. I know they'll be glad to see you. And Dennis, we'd like to thank you once again for stopping by. Your insights, just as they were last time, have been very helpful, certainly for myself, and I think I speak for all of us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I'm not up here again next race.
I was going to say, get back out there in that race car, because every time you sit next to us, we got a mess on our hands. And we will come right back to racing here at Anderson Speedway in a moment. Thanks again to Dennis Lampman. I'm Brian Trevor. Rob Albright and I are going to hang around with Sandy, and we'll be right back. Of the good wrench, number 88, Mike Eddy, being shown in 6th place now. 2 laps, or a lap down on the field. There's crew chief Howard Thomas standing on the war wagon. And here's the race up front as Brian Refner has closed yet more ground, and we understand that his crew is very happy with the way this car is performing right now.
Not a lot of time left. 368 of 400 laps completed, but that car right down on the bottom of the racetrack. Now he doesn't have to worry about losing a position to Bob Seneca. He can give everything he's got, turn all of his attention to Scott Hansen. Hansen drifts up. They're going to put a lap on Yale Conley, so it's going to be at least one more circuit before Refner has a chance to challenge for the top spot.
And the traffic is really spread pretty evenly all the way around the racetrack. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, will really help Scott Hansen, because every time Refner tries to show him a move, it's to the inside, and Scott Hansen can use those lapped cars that are spaced pretty evenly in front of him as kind of a setting picks for him out there.
Yeah, obviously Brian Refner is going to have to rely on his spotter to tell him when there's enough space ahead to really put on the pressure, try to make the move. Hansen, I'm sure, also will time his passes to try to force Refner to the high side whenever they're in the turns. Again, look at Scott's car drifting up off the bank. The bottom of the racetrack in turn number 4. Refner able to run down at the bottom. And it was opening up. Now it's narrowing once again as Refner moves in, hopefully to give him a shot again.
Well, what we're seeing is a lot of open ground in front of Scott Hansen right now. So if the spotters are doing their job now, oh, and look, Refner goes to the outside. That's a new move. He was showing him the inside and just drove around on the outside. Rob, yeah, that looked too easy. Why did he do that earlier?
I am thinking that perhaps Scott Hansen may be nursing a blister on a right front tire. We've seen that so many times tonight. Here's what's happened is now Brian Refner will try to cruise the last 25 laps of this race to a career first victory. Hansen waiting for the mistake in second position. Gary St. Amant about a third of a lap back in third position. Brad Loney continues to be fast. He's fourth now, 1 lap down.
And a lot of smoke that you see there in the foreground. And look at the Hansen now trying to come back. I don't think there's anything too wrong. Either that or he's just going to say, you know, let's buck up and get this race car out there. Sensima's car smoking a lot, especially when he goes on the overrun there. And apparently Hansen's tires are fine. But certainly,
and obviously he wouldn't be hanging right with it. Interesting situation. Maybe Scott let him go by, and they're right together on the racetrack again.
Dave Sensima's car smoking so bad that he has pulled back into the pit area there and has called it a night, or at least appears to be calling it a night. Nothing much to be gained by continuing to circulate. If you lose a few more laps at this point, it's not going to amount to much. In fact, Dave Sensima shown in 16th place, and the car behind him is Mike Miller, who is also out of the race. So Sensima has nothing to lose by stopping right now.
Isn't it interesting that having passed Scott Hansen, they almost seemed there for a couple of laps to reverse roles. When Refner was running in second position, he seemed to be able to grab the bottom better, and now it looks like Hansen's car is going to the low side and working a little stronger.
Well, we're seeing a little bit of tail happy there on the number 5 car. A little loose, I think, anyway. It looked like it as Refner went into the turn, got the car just a little loose there and started to wiggle it a bit. Now, Yale Conley dropping down low. Brian Refner going around the outside. Again, a lot of drivers just trying to finish laps, just stay out there, keep moving, and pile the laps up, because that is going to stand them in good stead right now. We're all the way down. Only 15 cars are apparently still running on the racetrack right now.
Yeah, and routinely we see 75 to 80% of our drivers finishing on the lead lap.
Apparently, Sandy Hang telling us now and relaying information through our producer Joel McKee that Hansen let Refner go by. That's quite surprising, as now they put a lap on Bob Seneker again. Why would Hansen do that?
I don't know, other than perhaps to cool the tires down, thinking that Brian may have overheated his in an effort to get up to Scott. And they are in really, really heavy traffic. There are cars running side by side right in front of them. Joe Knott strong in the top 10 and on just a lap down as they now work their way around both the 44 of Pat Bordeaux and car number 32, Ted Smokestack, who we continue to show in the top 10 and 9th position.
Some words come back to me from the old television show Hill Street Blues. Be careful out there. That's now is when you really need to be almost more cautious rather than what's normally done towards the end of a race, throw caution to the wind. As they get into traffic here, one little mistake at Anderson Speedway can magnify itself so much.
13 laps to go, and it reminds me of a race, I think it was 1990, when Harold Fair won the race here, as he had a slightly slower car than Scott Hansen, who ran right behind him, but Scott could never get around late in the going. We're letting everybody come through your picture. There was Rick Miller. There is car number 75, Jeff Neal. Look how many cars are minus their hoods. Refner now free of all that traffic for a while, and Scott has had a little more difficult time getting through the lap machinery.
Specifically, Joe Knott providing a little bit of a barrier down on the inside where Hansen's car appears to want to run. And Scott Hansen and Gary St. Amant, second and third, are the only 3 cars, along with Brian Refner, still on the lead lap here. And, well, we only need 3 to get down to victory circle, and all 3 of them are going to be on the lead lap. Brian Refner having his way with this race, and an historic points champion without a victory. Well, in about another 8 laps, Brian Refner will have his victory, and the American Speed Association's record of points champions, or even potential points champions, winning the season without a victory will be intact, or with at least 1 victory will be intact.
Still at least 5 cars with a strong shot at winning a title, as Brad Loney now begins to worry car number 53, Scott Hansen. Remember, Brad is a lap down, and after that altercation with Mike Miller, he's been the fastest car on the racetrack, minus some of that front body work. He's got Joe Knott right behind him, and I believe that is a battle for, no, we're showing, yeah, that is a battle for position, 1 lap down. Loney is 4th, Joe Knott is 5th. He has gotten by Mike Eddy, and now the Ford car number 48. I talked about Loney being fast. Knott is equally quick.
Those two racing for positions, a lap down, while Scott Hansen trying to just hang on to 3rd place. But he won't have any trouble doing that because the 4th place car is behind him, but a lap behind him.
Second spot is back for Hansen, and you're right, though. Gary St. Amant is way back, about half a lap off the pace being set by Brian Reffner.
Scott Hansen may have been forced to, for whatever reason, settle in and accept 2nd place. He had led, Brian Reffner passed easily, and here's 3rd place Gary St. Amant being pressured from behind by Glenn Allen Jr., but little Glenn is 3 laps down. So again, these guys are just sort of driving around, but they're almost in a different universe from one another.
White flag that time by for Brian Reffner. The battle is for 4th position, 1 lap down. Reffner just has to make it 2 turns, and he's going to win a first career ASA victory.
Well, the points leader is going to collect the checkered flag for his very first time ever, and the sparks are flying. They're setting off the fireworks already here. Actually, Rick Miller appeared to have cut down a tire at the last moment. Scott Hansen will nurse his way around there and apparently has accepted 2nd place. That seemed to be where he was destined to finish. A very happy Brian Reffner has his first victory, and there is the crew, and a very deserving celebration by the Finetti Motorsports team and the number 5 car, the structural transport Ford Thunderbird. Anderson 400 has another name to add to that trophy list. And Brian Reffner, a star of the future. He's a star of right now.
He certainly is. Brian had for many years hoped to come full-time to ASA Racing. Didn't even know until a week before the season last year, his rookie campaign with ASA, that he had a ride with the Don Finetti Racing team. And though there don't look like a lot of bad parts on that car, a lot of tire marks to show for the race.
He seems to collect those as a matter of course. Brian Reffner is pulled down into victory circle, and we will take you there with us in a few moments to speak with him. It's on Prime as GM Goodwrench Service presents the Anderson Weidner 400, brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By Goodyear, number 1 in racing, number 1 in tires. And by your GM Goodwrench Service dealer. We want your business. There it is, 400 laps officially completed here, and the top 3, there's number 5, Brian Reffner, 53, Scott Hansen, and 7, Gary St. Amant. First in line for the Sandy Heng Show down in the infield is the winner, Brian Reffner.
Brian Reffner, wow, this was a long time in coming, and it really wasn't that long. 2 years, now your first victory. You worked your way through the pack. What's it feel like?
It just feels great. This is the happiest feeling so far in my career. You know, this is awesome to come here and win an ASA race. Last year we really struggled this track, and that's what I got to say about this team. You know, we just put together our bad tracks and made them our best tracks. Good running. You know, these Sterling motors are fantastic, and I really thank Structural Transport for getting us in this winner's circle.
Towards the end, you and Hansen battling it out. You were elbow to elbow. It didn't seem like you were going to get him around them. What was going through your mind at that point?
Oh, I was really trying, you know. I was all excited, you know, because I knew we had better tires than Scott did. He tried, you know, he had the same left sides all race. Then I got on the inside and got a little carried away and lost the position, you know, and Bob Seneker got back in there, you know. So then I got Les Bott, crew chief, called me down, you know, told me we got a good car, just stay in there, stay cool, they'll come to you. So that's what we did, you know. Something happened to Bob, fell out, and we just stayed close to Scott and let him make the move where I could get in there safe, you know, and not take a chance to spin out again, and that was what it took to win this race.
That's one happy Brian Reffner who collects his first ASA victory.
And Rob, I have to think that collecting a first victory at Anderson might be a little bit extra special, really, because of the nature of this place. Not only the history that we spoke of at the very top of the show, but because this is not an easy place to win a race.
Well, and again, we just go back to the fact that Mike Eddy, who has been over the last dozen-plus years the guy to beat when you go to an ASA race, in 24 starts, 1 win to show for it, and Brian Reffner accomplishes the same thing, just his second time out.
2 starts, 1 win. That's batting 500 in any way you look at it. That's a pretty high average. Let's take a look at the wins winning move. Very often we have a lot of dissenting votes and discussion on the subject. This time I don't think there's any discussion whatsoever. The winning move won the race.
Absolutely. Coming off turn number 4, nobody expected it to be to the high side. Least of all, I think, Scott Hansen, although he did give him plenty of racing room. As they came off the backstretch, off of turn 2 and down the back straightaway, Refner had the advantage. Hansen said, okay, I'll settle for second, and not bad. He keeps his string alive. 6 races here. This is his worst finish.
Second being the worst finish, and that's happened a handful of times. I'll tell you what, I'll take that any day. Scott Hansen, you know the thrill of victory that's eluded him is going to sting just a little bit, and still he'll have to reflect on what is an amazing record. Here's a look at the unofficial results. We'll be right back. A little bit more to go here at the Anderson-Weidner. The winners in victory circle, there are the people that they've gone to see. Brian Refner winning his first career race, and at a very special place like Anderson, that's got to be quite the thing. And we'll look through all of the results right now. Scott Hansen, Gary St. Amant rounding out the celebration down there in victory circle. Brad Loney coming back after a controversial incident to finish 4th. Joe Knott with a very fast race car at the end of the event, the top 5.
Surviving in the second 5. Mike Eddy 6th, Bob Seneker 7th. Glenn Allen lost 3 laps under green, finished 3 laps down in 8th position. Great run, his best of the season for Ted Smokestad, and fellow rookie Rick Miller rounding out the top 10.
As we continue to look down through all 28 finishers, Pat Bordeaux, a very fine finish for him, surviving, getting a lot of laps in. Likewise, Kent Stauffer, Mr. Consistency, there he is, 12th finished, started 12th if I'm not mistaken. And Eddie Sharp, another rookie. Yale Conley doing a good job just hanging in there. Rick Beebe pulling in some laps and minimizing the loss of points to Rick Miller.
16th through 20th problems all night for Dave Sensa, but Mike Miller, that incident taking him out, destroying a race car. Todd Forbes 18th, ran strong early, so did Steve Holshausen. Jeff Neal 20th.
And Neal nursing his car around after looking as though he was going to be out. Bill Baird into the wall hard. Tony Raines started on the front row. Engine troubles, we certainly saw them working on it. Harold Fair, J.D. Summers, Ray Fullen. And that just about does it. 3 more cars to show in the unofficial results, and there they are. Ray Skillman, first one out, and Jim Cooper, Tim Sauter, we saw them. Let's go down once again now to Sandy Heng. She has found the runner-up here, the man with an enviable record, even though he only finished 2nd.
Well, Scott Hansen, we're looking at your car, and there's some rubbing marks. So what was it like tonight out there?
Oh, it was really hot out here, you know. Guys worked so hard. You know, we had a real ill-handling car yesterday, and we just changed everything this morning and got the car good. Screwed up, you know, did what Brian did last week. Should have pitted for tires. Leading the car just felt so good. It was my call. I thought if we get lap 300, I'd come in for tires, and just went green after that. And had all you do to hang on. The thing just got really loose. I want to congratulate Brian. He deserved it. He had a really good car. Leading the points, he needs a win too.
I tell you, right at the end, when Brian Refner was trying to get around you, and finally he got around you, I ran to your crew. They said, "Hey, he let him go around." What happened at that point?
Well, like I said, I was just out of tires. You know, I needed to. We thought if we could lead, we knew we were going to be in trouble by not getting another green or another caution for tires. So we knew they said I got to get to lap 340 something to lead the most laps. So that's what I concentrated on. When I got to that point, you know, I just let him go. And second 2 weeks in a row, I'll be happy with that.
That's Scott Hansen, your second place finisher tonight.
There's Mike Eddy and Tony Raines, the front row, walking off the racetrack together. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Our next telecast here for the American Speed Association in the AC-Delco Challenge Series will be Sunday, August 27th. Come and take a look with us at the Milwaukee Mile, one of the most famous and venerable racetracks of a little bit longer distance than this. We also want to remind you to tune in to Prime here on Sunday, October 1st, 2 p.m. Eastern, as the AC-Delco Challenge Series presents the Toledo 400, our second visit to Toledo. That'll be live October 1st. And we're going to run down the unofficial point standings here for you, give you a look at how things may have changed, and in fact, probably have changed here at the Anderson 400 Our point standings will be coming up here in just a moment. Want to remind you that, there they are. Brian Reffner, of course, still out in front. Scott Hansen, who started this race off in second position, remains there. Those two have run on the lead lap just about every race. You've been watching live ASA Racing on the AC-Delco series. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission is prohibited. Two-way communications provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of the American Speed Association. For Sandy Hang, my good friend Rob Albright here in the booth. For Dennis Lampman, I'm Brian Drever. So long from Anderson, and we'll see you next week.